Hello, dear friends. It's your Route 1 Encounter, Yubari Eradicate. And I'm here today to talk to you guys a little bit about this shit. Blastoise's model in Pokken Tournament. And we're going to talk about what on-model and off-model means. And I guess generally what I think of this design alteration here. I'm going to be doing a little doodling and rambling a lot. It's going to be one of those kind of videos. But you'll see here, so I have quite a few images pulled up. And we're just going to kind of go through them and kind of discuss the status of Blastoise. And I'm also going to compare him to a few other characters in Pokken, which we'll get to eventually. But the important thing right now to mention is that, yes, Blastoise's model has finally been fully revealed. And when they announced him, we received this much of... Oh, I'm on S7. God damn it. We received this much of the design. This is what we saw of Blastoise prior. You couldn't see the other arm that's like 600 feet long, and you couldn't see his gigantic legs. That's how much of Blastoise we got, was just from the shoulders up. And it looked great. It looks great. The problem being that... Okay, so let's just start doodling, why don't we? So we have the basic head shape, right? And the head is the same. Head's not much different, not much to say there. But the body is much thinner than normal Blastoise. He's egg-shaped, but this is like an upside-down egg. This is like a peanut, maybe? I don't know. But, I mean, okay, so kind of the core of a Pokemon's design is a friendly shape, right? They're big and round. You'll see the body, the arms are made of these three little circles. He's got big circle knee, big circle foot with his big toes. The actual foot itself looks great on Pokken Blastoise. The problem being that for some reason, I know the reason. I know why they did it. I gotta try to organize my thoughts. They made his arms and legs longer so that he can run and punch things, right? And they made the cannons bigger so that they're just more impressive in general. Whereas before they were a lot smaller. And, you know, he was small and inadequate, and then, you know, nobody really liked him, but now he's a jerk and everybody loves him. They also, you can't really see in this render, but they made his neck longer as well, which is kind of weird. But I don't know, I don't really understand why they did that in particular. But you've kind of taken away some of the round friend shapes, you know, and kind of made him... He's just kind of lanky and creepy. Like, if we put these next to each other, these little shitty sketches that I did in 2 seconds, you can kind of see the problem here, right? One is wide and squatty and round, and one is kind of lanky and thinner and not quite as wide. The reason that the width is kind of a problem is because Blastoise's core design, obviously based on his name, Blastoise, he's based on kind of a generic idea of a turtle, as well as a tank. He's supposed to be a tank, right? And so the idea behind his design, you can see it in this the Pokemon Adventures artwork. We'll keep that off screen for now. You can see the way he squat down. I imagine, the way I always pictured Blastoise in my mind, and the way that they kind of portray him in the show, is that he would hunker down and he'd, you know, dig his feet in. That's why he's got the gigantic claws. He'd dig his feet in, and then he'd use the cannons, like, he'd, you know, brace himself, and his width and weight and like stance were to brace his body for when he actually fires the cannons, because, you know, to imply that they're powerful enough to push him back otherwise. And being, you know, coming off of Squirtle and Wartortle having a lot of moves where they withdraw into their shell and spin, his increased body mass obviously would make that kind of move much more devastating to get hit by, I guess. But the biggest problem with Blastoise's design has always been, and a lot of people have pointed this out, it's the tail, where the tail becomes more impressive on both of them, and then it becomes a lot shorter on Blastoise himself. We can see in his official artwork he has a little stumpy tail. And but to begin our topic of off-model, besides talking about this, What does off-model mean? Well, every Pokemon has a design. I will use my Scizor here as a example, because as you can see here, this is Ken Sugimori's reference sheet for the anime. This is what they gave the artist for the anime to say, this is how you draw Scizor. This is his proportions. He's got a little tiny chest, he's got a big thorax, his head is round with the 3 spikes. This determines their length, their position, his eye shape, his hand shape. Everything about his design, this is the official reference sheet for what he's supposed to look like. This is the model, alright? The model for Blastoise is this egg shape down here. His in-game model is pretty accurate to his design, right? It might be a little weird looking. I think that his head's set up a little too high or something, but even here it's weird looking in his official artwork. But generally speaking, this is a pretty accurate representation of what Blastoise's body should look like, right? This is not. I forgot that you couldn't see my cursor until just this moment. But there are ways to get off model and keep the design intact, I guess. To not necessarily improve the design, but to make changes to it that don't break it, right? Hence this long ass tail, which I just noticed. Actually, this is from Pokemon Adventures. I didn't notice this until right before I started recording. The tail is incredibly long in the Pokemon Adventures Blastoise, and also his arm is actually just 3 circles. It's not, because this one it's 3 circles, but it's connected. You know, it's kind of like it's a grub shape where it's like this. And, you know, it's obviously they're separated, but it's still an arm. These are circles, you know. 3 fingers, that's part of the model. The foot has 3 toes in front, 1 toe in back, or 1 nail in back, whatever. He's got this little squared off nose everywhere. Same eye shape. The eyes are always Blastoise eye. Angry. And the ears are little pokies. But one of the things that happens to vary between these models, and this is more of just the Pokemon Adventures art being weird, but he's got this little cleft on his head too. Little cleft, cleft, no cleft. Pokken Blastoise maintains the cleft. It becomes extra important for Mega Blastoise because of the way his eyebrows change. I'm not really going to cover the Mega versions of these Pokemon because they all have Megas, but that's not really what I'm going for here. But yeah, so we have basic Blastoise design, the squatty egg version. We have Pokken's off-model long Blastoise. We have Pokemon Adventures off-model, like magnetic Kinect's arms with the long tail, but the feet are still the same. And the feet are important because this is how he anchors himself, right? Assumedly. This is how he attaches himself to the surface, whatever he's standing on, in order to not push himself back when he fires. At least that's the idea that I have in my brain, right? That's part of why this looks so weird, because these are big old running legs, right? These are big running legs that got kneecaps. Whereas the kneecaps, so you see these are separate from the body, whereas originally they are attached to the body inside the shell. Now, I understand the need for him to have legs that allow him to run and jump. However, you'll see in every design across the entire series, they're always the same. Even this jank-ass, this is from the inside the Pokemon Adventures. This is the cover, this is inside, so you see how well they stick to model. You know, it's all up to the artist, but the model is what you're supposed to base the design off of. And you can go off model when you're trying fast to get a manga done. But even so, they maintain what's important about the design, right? He's egg-shaped, he's got these feet, he's got these arms, and his head is the correct shape, it's the wrong size, which is acceptable. And also the cannons aren't attached properly, where you can see they're attached at the bottom, but they fold up like car headlights, like those foldy car headlights. Whereas here they're like not completely attached to the shell. But even that is not that big a deal. You can see here the same thing. They fold down to create a segment just like this, so that at the end of the day they all create the same shape for a flat shell. We move on to the movie, and this is something else I noticed right as I was about to start recording this. We get off model in the Pokemon movie. Now, not just in these cannons, because these cannons have extra little points and stuff to make him edgy, because he's the clone of Shell Shocker. He's the bad one, so he's got the spiky cannons. But what goes off model in the movie is they have extra fingers. And I never noticed that before, but they have 5 fingers in the movie where they should only have 3. But everything else is perfect. The head is absolutely perfect. The body is gigantic and egg-shaped. Perfect. Knees attached to the body, feet squatty, good for hunkering down. Everything about this design is perfect, right? But he's got 5 fingers. And the only thing I can think of is that they gave him the 5 fingers for the scene where the 2 Blastoise punch each other to make their fist more of a fist. Which, if we were going to go off model in Pokken, that would have been completely acceptable. Having him have 5 fingers to make him, like, you know, to give him a fist and make him, like, able to grab things better, perfectly fine. That would have been a completely acceptable design change. Additionally, if they were going to make all of his limbs longer, then why did they not also make his tail longer? Because you can see he still has the same little stumpy tail. That would be right here for this Blastoise. It's confusing. It's weird. Like, I don't know why they went with making these longer, but the tail's the same length. It's strange. But yeah, so the Pokemon First movie designs, even tail's the same. Everything's perfect except for the fucking fingers. It's weird. But I would also like to point out that in the movie, this scene is Blastoise. He does exactly what I said he does. He runs into this frame, so that sets a precedent that Blastoise with squatty legs can still run. He runs into frame. He hunkers down and fires his water cannons, right? Everything's completely functional. I mentioned earlier there's a scene later on where Shell Shocker and his clone are fighting and they're just punching each other with their fists, like in the face, right? Fully functioning, fully punchable arms. No problem. Meaning that there is no reason that this has to be like this. There's no reason. Like, maybe to make the animation fit to the skeleton better. I can understand that. But at the same time, they didn't have to change Suicune's body to make it. Like, Suicune was a nightmare for the development team to make because animating a quadruped sucks. Especially in a fighting game where he has to do, like, attacks. It sucks. It's really hard to do. Even in Okami, like, Okami's body is animated really well. Or, Amaterasu's body is animated really well. But it's not entirely, like, it doesn't look right all the time. She's kind of strange sometimes, right? In Twilight Princess, it's a pretty good dog, but he doesn't have to do a whole lot. And when he does do things, a lot of times his arms and legs will stretch in weird positions that they shouldn't as a dog, right? Because creating a quadruped is difficult. Creating a sword, I imagine, was not the... I mean, it was probably easier because he doesn't have legs to deal with, but creating any kind of weird body type makes problems for, you know, for making a skeleton to rig the model to. I imagine horror games with, like, necromorphs from Dead Space and whatever have a really tough time with that. But, so I can understand from a skeleton perspective. But at the same time, Empoleon's in the game, and his legs are short too. And so that's where I'm kind of confused, is if Empoleon's legs are just as short as Blastoise's, and Empoleon is still able to run like a Naruto character, why did they feel the need to elongate his legs, which messes up the design of, like, you know, the on-model design of his core concept, of him being a tank, right? Because this doesn't look defensive. This looks agile, which is not what Blastoise is known for. I was completely willing to sacrifice movement speed. I would have taken half the jump height. I don't care. I would have taken any kind of mobility limitations for him to be able to stand there and just, like, lock in place and not move at all and just do what he needed to do from his standing position. He would have a run, obviously. He could move around within his shell because he does, you know, suck into his shell and spin around and stuff. Just like Squirtle and Wartortle. So that could have been his main mobility option. His dash, even his jump. He could have just popped into the shell and then launched him up in the air, shooting water out of the shell. Whatever. But I just really don't get why this. To kind of point out that this is not just a Blastoise situation, something a lot of people don't really notice about Pokken is that other characters are also off-model, but their off-modelness makes more sense and actually kind of improves their design. So we'll go to Sceptile first. You can see with Sceptile we maintain the Pokemon series, like I was mentioning, the body type. He's shaped like an egg. He's got a little stumpy tail. I mean, it's long, but in terms of longer tail Pokemon, it's stumpy. Mewtwo's is ridiculous. Mewtwo's is like this, whereas his is a little tiny. He's got little stumpy legs, which, you know, obviously they're thinner, and they are like the raptor-shaped legs, or lizard legs, or whatever, bird legs. So they're clearly better for mobility, but they're still short because, you know, and his arms are short because that's how Pokemon are designed. They're supposed to be, like, you know, friendly. They're pocket monsters, right? When you look at their core designs from the beginning of the series back to Slowbro and Nidoqueen, Nidoking, they've always been this kind of shape, where it's head, neck, if they have a neck. They could be like Rhydon or Blastoise not have a neck. Egg-shaped body, either really wide or thin like this is fine. And then the legs can be either the stumpy elephant feet, or later on we added dragon legs. Arms, little fat arms, or longer kind of, you know, reptilian T-Rex arms, whatever. But then you go to Pokken, and even in his artwork, he has kind of this chest shape here, and then like the, you know, the body, you can see there's like a separation of a chest where the shoulders attach, and his arms come off of that. You can see his elbows and then into his hands, you know, and there's like this humanoid arm kind of deal going on here, which is fine. And his legs, you know, they look a little more realistic than they do in his model. Meaning that the model, the in-game model, is technically off-model, which is weird because, you know, obviously he looks a little bit rounder and squattier. His neck is longer in his artwork, but still he maintains the design, right? It's all there. It's just a little bit off. It's not a big deal. Doesn't change anything. However, in Pokken, we get very defined chest, very defined hip bone, actually. And then his like crotch area is not as gigantic as in the original artwork. Very defined shoulders, super defined human arms with the, you know, bigger towards the wrist to make the claws look bigger. Super long neck, crazy long neck. His ears are a little more pointed. That's not necessarily, like, doesn't really mean anything. But he's thinner, he's taller. He's very agile looking. He's got a longer, wider tail. You'll notice, like, maybe it's just me, but it looks thicker to me. Thick, double C thick. And his legs are much longer, much bigger feet. When he runs, he looks like I said the word raptor earlier. He looks like he's designed to be running fast, right? Which is great. I think that the Pokken model for Sceptile actually improves his visual design. It makes him look more intimidating. It makes him look faster, and it would have made it easier to model him as well, because, you know, like the more human the animations get, I assume the easier it is to make them happen. So this is great. This is perfect. This is also fine because this is on model. This is off model. But it improves what was already there. It makes him look like his concept. He's an agile predator, you know, assumedly, being a reptile, who lives in the trees and has to jump around a lot, runs a lot. He's fast, and he's fast now, right? So that works. That's fine. Moving on to make a new layer. Moving on to Garchomp. It's a very similar situation where we have a reptilian shark man here. He kind of has this thing going on from the beginning where he has the defined chest, defined crotchal region, and then the neck. He's got this big old Corey Taylor neck, his triangular head, and then his lower jaw. So he doesn't completely fit into the old, like, the Blastoise design, But he does, like, even Slowbro, if we were to draw Slowbro, he'd be a head and then a little chest and then a big body with his little arms, right? And then the tail and then the elephant feet. And that's Slowbro, right? Like, that's Slowbro. Here's your Slowbro, right? That's the body type. So this is fine. This is not, you know, this fits into Pokemon, what makes a Pokemon, which is another video I'll make for another day. But this is the bipedal Pokemon body type, and as such, you know, in line with the original stumpy feet, to, you know, the friendly appearance, he has kind of stumpier yet still dragon legs. But you can see how they're the same as Sceptile's, but they're much wider towards the bottom because he's not as much of a runner. But, like, you know, like you get the impression that he can still get around quick enough, but he's a dragon, right? He's big and intimidating and heavy, even though he can fly for some reason. But he's got the big shoulders, human arms, very similar body type to Sceptile, and as such, I mean, you can see it here. This is weird too because the model for him, his in-game model is also off-model from his design. Where this, the only real difference with Sceptile is that his neck is longer, really. Everything else is pretty much the same. But when you get to Garchomp, he's much thinner in his artwork. And this isn't just the angle. Like, it's not an angle thing. This is just, he's much thinner in his artwork and in the show. His whole, like crotch area doesn't seem as gigantic. And his shoulders are a little more defined. Like, his shoulders and then the under part of his armpit are a little more more of the chest than in here, where it's like the chest with the arm sticking off of it. But other than that, generally the same. Head is a little bit, I don't know. I think this is just an artistic thing where, like, it's the way they modeled the head looks kind of weird. It's kind of like how Mewtwo, if you look at Mewtwo's X and Y model, his eyes are really far apart, where, like, regular Mewtwo would be something like this, you know, where there's Mewtwo with his ears, you know, there's Mewtwo, and then his eyes are, like, here, and then the other side it would be, like, right here, right? Like, that could be an angle of Mewtwo's head, whereas in X and Y, his head is, like, octagonal for some reason. Like, his head shaped like this, with one eye over here and then one eye over here, and he's super weird looking. Like, his head's way farther apart in X and Y. Just a note. But that's one of those things where however they made the model just happened to look weird, but it's not necessarily a change of the design. It's like if you know, it's like if when I drew lightning, my lightning doesn't look exactly like lightning, but it retains the core design. It's just how I drew it that time, right? But then we get to Pokken, and just like with Sceptile, they made, well, actually there's a little extra thing to him. So his chest is defined, and I use this picture because his basic artwork doesn't really show off his body that well. But you have this where he's very thin in the middle. You get the big old crotch area with the gigantic hips, like, or the big thighs. Big old dragon thighs, big old bell-bottom dragon feet, which look really cool when he does Earthquake, which is probably why they're like that. But these are raptor legs. These are fucking dinosaur legs, and those combined with his much larger tail, much larger, much longer, heavier looking, very tall dorsal fin, very long. What the fuck are those called? The arm fin, shoulders not super defined, but it's the fin's longer. The arm isn't super defined. It's about the same as before. But what really changed was that his legs got bigger, like thicker and more powerful looking. Oh yeah. His tail got thicker, more powerful looking. Beautiful. But they made his head smaller and his neck longer, which I'm not versed enough to get into, like, the evolutionary idea behind it, but things like this, when their heads are a little bit smaller, it makes them look a bit more intimidating. he's shaped like a dinosaur now. Like this, in this one, he's shaped like a Pokemon. This, he's shaped like a dinosaur, right? And it makes him look more intimidating when he runs. It makes him look faster. I mean, he's able to run faster than he would if he was shaped like this, because it would look awkward. This looks perfect. This looks perfect for a fighting game, right? It's probably the best. Like, it's one of the best model reworks in the game, because they didn't do a whole lot, but they did enough, right? Beautiful. And the last one we're going to get into is Scizor, which I already pulled up earlier. We have the model sheet for Scizor where you can see he's got, okay, so we'll kind of zoom in here. He's got these round feet, right? Round feet with the toe coming off of them. The toe is attached to the outside of the foot. You see that? And then his claws, you know, claws or whatever. Circular hands, let's say circle hands. Little chest, connector body. Big thorax. So, again, it doesn't follow the like body type of a bipedal Pokemon like Slowbro or Blastoise or Rhydon or even Garchomp or Sceptile exactly. But it's like them, where it's a variation that maintains the proportions enough, right? It's still shaped like a Pokemon. Here, though, you can see, and here's where we get into off-model number 1. Here, his leg is, the toe is not necessarily attached to the outside. It is one consecutive shape, right? It's this shape right here. And then there's a line to define that the toe is separate. And then he has a little extra, toe for bracing on the back, so that he's able to stand on these weird pokey feet he has. And then everything else is the same. Everything else is the same as the model sheet from the anime, except his feet are drawn differently. So what this says to me is that this was a design change that they made later, possibly after the model was made, because this is how he looks. This is how he looks in Gen 2, right? This is how he looked for a very long time, but this is his current artwork with this toe. And that's the main design change right there. And you can see it's not in his model. His model is the circle with the toe external, right? Just like the artwork from before. But these two are like, you know, this is the model currently, this is the artwork currently. So something changed, and they decided this looks cooler. And you can see it here, where his foot is no longer, and this isn't super great either, but his foot is no longer a circle with a toe attached to it. Now it is this weird, like, this shape, like a teardrop shape, with the toe coming out of it. Like, it's the exoskeleton is around the toe. You see that? Where it goes, it's down, and then it comes up and back around, and then there's this, right? And the toe's attached in the back. And the back toe is much smaller than it was previously. Maybe not necessarily, but it's smaller. But other than that, exactly the same. Completely, everything's exactly the same between the two of them. He is probably the closest to his artwork, but all they did was they changed his foot shape, and it makes him look more agile. And I don't know how to explain that, but it like shifting the weight to the bottom of his foot makes his kicks look stronger. It makes his it makes the hover dash look cooler. It makes him, it improves the design, but everything else is the same, right? They improved his posture a little bit. Maybe made his wings a little bigger, but you get the idea. He's the same, but just changing his feet a little bit. Went off model, even off model from this, but it improves the design. And it doesn't change anything about Scizor. You know, like Scizor is, he's fast, but he doesn't, in the original concept design for him, he doesn't use the wings for flying. The wings are for like exhausting heat, basically. But he's too heavy to fly. But he's still an agile creature, right? And he's still, I mean, the hover dash is still how I imagine him moving around in general. And there's pictures from the manga of him carrying Machamp and flying through the air. So he can fly. It's just the original design was like, oh, they're not so much for flying, they're for exhausting heat because his body's made of metal, right? So he's heavy and he would heat up a lot. So he needs a way to get rid of the heat. So the wings, right? And that's why they flap so fast. But anyway, my point is that they changed it, right? But it still looks cool. It still fits. This doesn't look cool and this doesn't fit. And maybe that's a personal thing. Maybe this whole thing has been for nothing, right? Maybe I've just been rambling. But you can see where they on these ones, they didn't move anything, right? Let me turn Scizor off and make another layer. Let me get rid of Scizor, bring Sceptile back, because these are the main three. These are the main ones that I want to talk about. I could go into Mewtwo also. I don't feel like doing Mewtwo. It's whatever. All that changed with Mewtwo was they made his head's like a weird shape, and they made his tail too short in Pokken. Part of what makes Mewtwo's design so cool and intimidating is his long, like, you know, heavy tail, which it's his primary form of attack in Smash Bros. So, you know, the tail is part of the design. But in Pokken, they decided that the tail's not that big of a deal. I don't think he uses it at all. He kicks things and punches things, which I could totally see being because he switches to Mega Mewtwo, and he's Mega Mewtwo X, so he needs to be a kicking and punching character, which, fine. Whatever. It's not a big deal. I do think that Mewtwo looks less cool as a result of losing his long tail, but I think that having him be a Mega Mewtwo X, it works in that regard because, I mean, if you think about it in terms of the game, he would know fighting type moves in order to use them as Mewtwo X. So if you think of it in terms of that, it's whatever. But I'm not gonna go making too many excuses for Mewtwo because I do think that one looks less cool also. Where everyone else in the game, their design changes look better. Maybe not Pikachu. Pikachu's another one where he's a little bit too long, but that's so that he can do Heihachi poses. But also Pikachu's body type isn't, I don't even want to say that. I don't even want to say it's great for fighting. Because like in Smash, he does a lot of he does his Blanca Ball, he has tail whip attacks, he has a headbutt, but he doesn't really punch or kick. But they wanted him to have Heihachi's moveset, so they made him slightly longer so that he can punch and kick, but not so long that it's creepy. Not so long that he looks like the giant from Twin Peaks. But anyway, yeah, so all this to say that these two designs were altered slightly, and in my opinion, slightly altered for the better. This design was altered drastically, and not necessarily for the better. I think that it'll look better in gameplay. I hope it'll look better in gameplay. But like, let me just sketch out the arm here again. Because see, this is the other problem, is that you've taken this design, which was, you know, here it's 3 circles. We already talked about this, it's 3 circles. Here it's 3 like slabs of meat, right? That's it. But it's still circles, right? They're round. But here it's like a circle and then a cylinder and then another circle. It looks like a robot arm, right? Like you're seeing this, right? This big old square in the middle. Like that shouldn't be there. It should be like this. Right? Should be circle, circle, circle. With the 3 little grabbers. That's a Blastoise arm. This is not a Blastoise arm. But, I mean, I don't even really know where exactly I'm going with this. It's just something interesting I wanted to talk about, and also kind of to explain why he looks weird. Because a lot of people might think that he looks weird, but not exactly understand why he looks weird. But this is why, is because of this. And I understand. I don't think it was necessary, but the only benefit of the doubt I can give, the only benefit of the doubt that I can give is that it was an issue with modeling him. It was a gameplay issue. At which point, I guess, man, you do what you gotta do. But yeah. So that's a little talk about on model, off model, Blastoise, Sceptile, Scizor, Garchomp. And probably the next video on Blastoise will be gameplay of Blastoise, so please look forward to that. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was gonna say. Is there anything else I was gonna say? Oh, let me can I, oh, here, I'll just do this. I'm gonna throw up 2 more images real quick. So here we see Blastoise. This is one of the screenshots they put out yesterday. Here we see Blastoise standing, and you can see, like, this is what the problem is that from behind, this is how he looks. Like, this is a human arm. This is a human arm. He has an ass cheek now. They gave him an ass cheek. And he looks like he's wearing bell bottoms. And then he's got the little stumpy tail. Why didn't they make his tail longer if they're gonna... He straight up has an ass cheek, and I didn't even notice. Like, oh no, fuck. Oh, I'm drawing on the wrong layer. Oh, Christ. I'm falling apart here. But no, this is like ass cheek, kneecap, thigh, or no, yeah, thigh, calf, and then giant elephant foot. It's weird. Doesn't need to be there. But the other one I was gonna throw up is let me control print screen here. Doing this very professionally, very live. We'll drop one of these. In this picture, he's kneeling, and if this was the reason they did this so that he could kneel, the only thing I can say is that he doesn't need to kneel because he does this. This is his kneeling. He don't gotta kneel. The fuck's he gotta kneel for? I might as well just, while I'm doing this, pull up his other artwork. So those are his projectiles. He sucks into his shell, which looks as you would expect. He's inside the shell. Oh, here's a really good shot of... I'm doing this super lazy, super fast. I just wanted to get this out there. Here's him doing his burst, where you can really see that Christ below us, look at his neck. He went from having no neck to looking a little bit like Gooby. Charizard, please. Charizard, why? Why you do this, Charizard? What else we got here? I mean, his Mega looks awesome. The neck is weird, but his Mega looks awesome. And he hits him with this fat... And grab another one. He hits him with the... hits him with this fast... boy, aquarium beam. And I want to know how we get from charging up his fist to shooting the main cannon. But I hope it's a 1-2 into a big burst. Oh wait, we see some kind of like splash here. So maybe that's like that. But how does he get up there? I don't know. Only time will tell. But I think that's it for now. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching. And like I said, Blastoise footage coming soon. I am maining him. The design is kind of bothersome, but it's bothersome in the way that the whole Butterfree Venomoth thing is bothersome, where it's like, why doesn't Caterpie evolve into Venomoth? Why doesn't Venonat evolve into Butterfree? They have the exact same color palettes, exact same body type, face, hands, everything's the same. They just don't do it. And it's frustrating, but we deal with it because we still love those Pokemon. I still love Blastoise. I'm still gonna main Blastoise, unless he asks, cause we only pick top tier out here now. Ever since Scizor let me down, we only pick top tier now. But no, he'll be fun. It'll be fun. It'll be great. It's gonna be great. But yeah. So I will catch you all next time. Be cool, be wild, be groovy. Goodbye.